guys, my name is Zoe and I'm the new director of YouTube productions here at Girl Genius Magazine, and I'm here with Zoe Simon. Is that how I pronounce your last name?
Yes.
Great. Yeah. So I'm here with Zoe Simon, and you can just introduce yourself. Just give me like your age, where you're from, and just a little fun fact about yourself.
Okay. So I'm also Zoe Simon. I'm a senior at Woodriver High School in Haley, Idaho. A fun fact about myself, I have 2 black belts in 2 different martial arts. So yeah.
I'd love to talk about Simon. Obviously, that's your baby, your baby passion. So, tell me and the viewers, what is Simon?
So STEAM On is an equitable education nonprofit that I founded in 2019. So what we essentially do is we provide tutoring, mentorship, and learning resources to underrepresented and underserved communities, whether that's women in STEAM, FGLI students, which is first gen low income, LGBTQ+, differently abled students, etc. So we do that in a variety of platforms, whether that's just a tutoring session via Skype or FaceTime and trying to figure out a difficult concept, or doing some long-term mentorship for students who just want some people to look up to in fields like in STEAM. So yeah, that's what we do.
Wow, that sounds great. So why choose like tutoring as like a method of trying to make like STEAM accessible to underrepresented groups and just students?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I noticed about in my community was like these really bad statistics in terms of who is proficient in which subjects. So I saw that underserved populations in my own county were proficient in math, English, and science 24% of the time, whereas non-underserved students, which are mainly, white, middle and upper class populations, were proficient in 61% of cases. So I was really like, first of all, freaked out by that gap in terms of learning outcomes.
Yeah.
So that's really what catalyzed me to start STEAM On. And then in terms of the tutoring aspect of what we do, I was looking at what other nonprofits provided, and a lot of them do camps over the summers and that kind of stuff. But what I didn't see was this long-term connection between students and mentors that they have that look like them and come from similar backgrounds to they do. So what I really wanted to start was this kind of enduring connection between a student and a person that they could admire or who could inspire them. So I think that's a big part of our tutoring program, as well as just encouraging people who necessarily don't view STEAM as a passion, but really at least want to be proficient in it, understand it, and then maybe be inspired to pursue it in some way. So that's the other aspect of the tutoring program.
Wow. Okay. And through STEAM On, like what changes or like impacts have you made?
Something that's really cool is, a lot of the kids come to us because they're struggling in their classes. They just, they start off and they just want to pass their course.
Yeah.
So what's really cool to watch is the shift between this mentality of just getting the grade that they need to move on in terms of a class to really like being interested in and passionate about the subjects that we tutor them in. So I have this student who I've been tutoring for a few months, and he started off and he was taking an algebra class with me, and we would just go over concepts. And about a month ago, he called me, and we have tutoring sessions every Sunday. So he called me on Sunday and he said, "Zoe, I have something to tell you." And I asked him what it was, of course. And he said, "I think I want to go to college." And it was really special for me because he comes from a really low income family. He has to walk to the library every week to do our Skype sessions because his family doesn't have Wi-Fi or internet connection. And to say that he wanted to go to college was a really big deal for me. And then to top it off, he said he wanted to study math, which was the subject he had come in hating.
Right.
So that kind of experience in that moment was really powerful for me.
Wow, that's amazing. Like I like how you just kind of like brought kind of a personal story. And I think it's just amazing like how your program is just kind of made just like I suppose like one individual, but so many individuals kind of want to come in hating something, but then coming out wanting to pursue that. And that really is a big change because
Yeah,
you're kind
absolutely.
in kind of individuals, but overall just kind of seeing all that. I mean, it must make you just more kind of like want to continue with this and just like even make it bigger, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
And kind of how did you create STEAM On? Like was I because I believe like kind of like creating, especially in like a student like run like nonprofit organization, like that must have been challenging to kind of like create the idea and then like make it happen and all that stuff.
Yeah. So in terms of just being inspired to found the organization, like I brought up, a big part of it was kind of inspired by the gap that I saw in my own community in terms of learning outcomes, but it was also personal in a sense as well. Like I'm sure you've had similar experiences. Being a woman in STEAM is really hard
Oh,
at times.
definitely.
So I remember this moment. I was sitting my junior year in my AP physics class, and I was one of 3 girls out of 20 students. And I was just looking around, and I
Wow.
noticed like it's all white boys coming from middle and upper class backgrounds. So that moment, just for me right there, like I'd always been in courses and atmospheres where that was the case. But I was just sitting there. I was like, wow, this is so not diverse. So,
Yeah,
you know,
I can, yeah,
yeah,
I can see that. I can definitely see
yeah.
that. Yeah. That's great.
So
And like,
there's two
sorry,
aspects of it, like,
continue. Yeah.
yeah, sorry. The two kind of aspects of it are seeing the situation in my own community and then kind of experiencing it personally really inspired me to start it. And then just in terms of growing the organization, that was the second part of your question, right? So, and
Hmm.
then in terms of how I kind of got the organization off the ground, I think a big and really important platform for us was social media, obviously, because it kind of got a lot of traction at first. And I noticed students all over the country and all over the world started reaching out and just asking how they could get involved. So that was a really important resource in terms of gaining traction and as an organization. And that's how I found almost all of the members of my leadership team that are all super amazing.
Wow, that's
So,
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, I think there's like an aspect of initiative that you have, and it seems like all your members have, kind of reaching out, being really proactive, and I think that's amazing.
yeah,
Do you have like any tips or advice for on like how to establish like a youth-led organization? Because I believe like a lot of at least like my peers are kind of like wary about kind of like creating their own business or organization because it is a lot of hard work. Like
right.
no shame in that, right? Yeah. So like, do you have any tips or advice?
Yeah. So I know it was hard for me. It's like, it's so like starting something is always the hardest aspect of it, I think. It's
Yeah.
hard to walk out the door and say, I'm actually going to do it today. So I think just realizing that that's going to be the hardest part, the most challenging aspect of starting an organization, a business, whatever it is, and just kind of saying, okay, like, screw it, this is what I'm going to do. So
Hmm.
there's an aspect of like courage and just kind of self confidence that it takes to just begin something. So I think that's definitely the hardest part. And I would just say, don't just dip your toe in the water, like go all in if you're going to start something. Like be able to dedicate your time to it, put your passion, your heart, your soul into it, and just, don't feel like anyone can detract from what you're about to do.
Hmm.
And then just in terms of like women and people in underrepresented groups in STEAM in general, I would just say don't be afraid to take up space. I know that it can be super uncomfortable for people, especially underrepresented and underserved groups, to be in a room with other people in STEM. So I think it's just really powerful to say, okay, don't feel bad about taking up space. Do it because you have to. So I think that's my other kind of word of advice in terms of people in STEAM careers and education, whatever it is.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, definitely. And kind of like through Steam on, like, what are the positive changes like you would like to see in the future?
Yeah, so obviously the organization strives toward more equitable education as a whole. So I know in the future I'd really love, like especially with the whole coronavirus thing, it's kind of crazy how it
Oh,
all worked out. But
it's kind of, yeah,
yeah,
kind of
so
crazy.
yeah, but seeing people like not have access to learning materials who don't have Wi-Fi connection or who don't have access to consistent internet and can't do their lessons online, like I think we as a society just need to shift in terms of how we like complete our educational goals and how we teach because clearly the method is very outdated. Like we've been teaching students the same way for 80 to 100 years. So
Hmm.
I think in many senses, the field of education needs to catch up with the digital age, and we need to figure out a way that makes education more accessible, more equitable, and more even for all of our students. So I know that's why STEAM got started, is just because students, obviously, with different access to different resources, have very different learning outcomes. So, along that whole path of education, we need to allow students and provide them with the resources that they need to have equal opportunity, equal access. So I'd love to see that in the future, I guess.
Yeah, I'd love to see that too. That's great. And kind of like touching off that, like how do kind of students get involved with your organization? Like the different ways that they can get involved with.
Yeah. So there are a few different ways that you can get involved with the organization, one of which is to apply to join our international leadership team. So I know we have a few positions available between like country director to state director, varying kind of time commitments on a weekly basis. But we're trying to get incorporated as a 501c3 right now. So I know what we're doing is adding a national director of finance and logistics. So if you're interested in any of those positions, head to steam-on.org.
Yes, don't be shameful with that promo.
Yeah, I'm just gonna hit it with a plug, you know. So we're looking for people to join our leadership team, whether you want to be a state director or anything else, we have an opportunity for you. Other avenues are to obviously tutor. That's a big part of our program. So if you're interested in tutoring students on any kind of time commitment, we have opportunities to do that. You can start a local chapter at your school or somewhere in your community. And what we ask is that you just do weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly meetings with a group of other people that are passionate about STEAM. So you can kind of connect with people your age who are interested in that kind of thing. You can follow us on social media and kind of keep up with what we're doing. You can write blog posts for our new blog. We have lots of different opportunities to get involved. So yeah.
Wow, that sounds great. That sounds really exciting as well. And kind of like, do you have any like future plans or kind of future projects for STEAM on, like other than like local chapters and tutoring? Like, is there something else that you would want to implement that would kind of like make STEAM on even a bigger organization, have even a bigger impact?
So eventually we'd love to do like, we need more funding for this, obviously, so that's a big reason why we're getting incorporated, but kind of camps in the summers that would be free or, you know, very affordable for students who could come. So doing kind of like a code with Classie style, but obviously not just for coding, for other subjects as well, but to really help these kids get kind of ahead over the summer. I've been looking a lot at statistics about kind of the issue with summer education or the lack thereof for students coming from first gen and low income backgrounds. There tends to be a huge decrease in learning over that period, and it really impacts their ability to perform in the next year of school. So we'd love to kind of we'd love to do a continuing education thing in the summer in terms of camps. We're looking to start an interview or podcast series kind of similar to yours, just to get people some more inspiration.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I would listen to it.
Just to highlight inspiring, you know, underrepresented groups in STEAM. We're starting a blog series this week, so we'll have our first blog post up this week or next week. And then, yeah, just kind of growth in terms of all directions.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I think it's exciting to see kind of like reaching different kind of platforms to kind of reach out to other people. And kind of like, so I wanted to ask, like, because it seems like kind of in your, like, at least like your team, like there's kind of this diversity. Like, how do you kind of manage the work with like people who are in different countries? Like, there's just like different time kind of like spaces. Like, how do you kind of manage that? You have like national directors, you have state directors. That's really interesting because I've kind of never seen like a student like a youth-led like organization can be this kind of like diverse.
Yeah, so shout out to Slack for helping us stay organized. But yeah, I have a really amazing like international leadership team. We have people in 6 countries in like 16 or 17 states. So it gets a little crazy at times just in terms of organizing the whole group of people. But I'm lucky to have I'm really fortunate actually to have really amazing team members who kind of keep everyone else on track. You know, we kind of figure out when we have time to talk or when it's just, you know, we have to text and we'll check it the next morning. But they're really good about staying organized and staying on top of stuff. And yeah, I have really amazing teams. They make the whole process a lot easier.
Yeah. And kind of like I was kind of looking up on the website and I was really something that piqued my interest was kind of like the combination of political activism and local engagement and peer-to-peer education. Like, why that combination? Why do you think that combination works when you're trying to kind of like creating this outreach and kind of making STEAM kind of like more accessible?
Yeah. So when I was starting the organization, I thought we were talking about in terms of this mentality of doing stuff on both the community and international level was definitely a must for me. I was like, that's the only way we can enact real change. That's the only way we're actually going to be able to reach as many people as we want to impact. So it's kind of a cliche. I love this phrase, and it's kind of what I started the organization with in mind. But is you know, think globally, act locally. So what I really wanted to do is have this kind of grassroots work at a community level so that people can reach out to people in their area, in their town, whatever it is, in their school, and really kind of make an impact in that way, as well as looking at it with this global mindset, right? Like, this is the issue, this is what we're trying to do, this is how we're going to do it. So I think just in terms of starting the organization, for me, that was always what I had in mind, is let's work not only in our own communities, but around the world and with people around the world in order to enact real change. Because I think just, limiting your mindset to, okay, I'm going to do this for my town, or okay, I'm going to do this for the whole world, is kind of limiting in either way that you look at it.
That's true.
So I wanted to make sure that we were really addressing both attitudes and, doing both actionably.
Definitely. And I saw kind of like previously you were talking about like women in STEAM and kind of like,
Yeah.
so what do you think we can do as females to combat like the inherent gender discrimination in the workforce, especially in the STEAM workforce? Like there's this kind of, I don't know, for me at least, like I kind of feel like especially in the workforce or at school really, there's this weird dynamic between like males and females.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't want to kind of restrict gender in these two, like kind of like a binary, but
Right.
there's just really weird dynamic, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think, like I brought up earlier, I think women are scared, and, just underrepresented people in general are nervous about taking up space. We've not really been allowed to do that historically. It's
Yeah.
super uncomfortable. So I don't think it's easy to walk into, whether you're in an educational field, whether you're in the workplace, professional or not, I think it's very hard for women, first gen, low income people to say, okay, my kind of people have never been here before, but I'm going to step into a position of power. I'm going to take up the space. I'm going to, do whatever. So I think just in general, that's a difficult kind of reality to overcome, and to force yourself to step into a situation like that, just because it is challenging. It is, in some way unprecedented, whatever situation you're in. So I just, I think a big part of our message, and what I'd like to tell other people who, are scared to do that, or in terms of gender equality as a whole, is don't be afraid to take up space. And in general, you're not alone. I think it can often feel very isolating, whether in professional or educational
Mhm.
realms, for people who don't have that kind of representation. So I think just reaching out to other people in your field, because there's always someone, right? I think
Right.
just
That's
finding
true.
people who look like you, who are like you, have similar backgrounds, is really important. And that can add a degree of comfort to something that is very uncomfortable. So I think that's really important. And then just again, like, build up the self-confidence and this courage in yourself to, like I said, not just dip your toe in, but just
Yeah,
dive in and really
definitely.
just embrace the uncomfort. It's not going to be fun. It might be really hard, but just do it. And, you'll have done it.
Okay.
You'll have inspired someone along the way.
Oh, that's really nice. That's really nice. That is.
Yeah.
And kind of like, who is your role model that kind of inspires you to kind of just go and step out of your comfort zone and just kind of not be afraid? Like, who kind of like influences you to do those things?
Yeah. So, okay, this sounds incredibly nerdy, but like I had this weird obsession with Marie Curie when I was little.
I think every kind of nerdy girl did just when they were
Oh
younger.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so after I learned that she was the only person ever to get a Nobel Prize in chemistry and in physics, I was like, wow, this girl is badass. So my 7-year-old self was just like, you're iconic and I'll love you forever. And she's kind of always, yeah, that's always kind of inspired me. But then in terms of a real, like, more actionable personal level, I work for my local Democratic organization. I was campaign fellow for a 7-time Paralympic medalist in 2 different sports. Her name is Muffy Davis, and I was a fellow for her for 2 years.
Mhm.
So her just kind of story, because I walked doors with her and campaigned with her for a few years, and just getting to talk with her about what she's overcome and what she's had to kind of persevere throughout her life. She was in a really awful ski accident when she was 16 and lost, use of her legs. So just hearing her talk about not only her time in the hospital, but the recovery process and learning to gain self-confidence and do all these amazing things in her later life. She's been a really incredible role model for me. It's not really STEAM specific, but she just inspires me to be a better person and overcome adversity in general. So she's been really amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't think everything really has to be theme specific, even if you're pursuing that. Like, I just think, like, in general, fighting for equality for females is something that we all need to do just in society.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, kind of, we're hitting the 20-minute mark, but just one last question to kind of conclude this entire interview. What
Yeah.
is one piece of advice you would want to give to all girls who are watching this video? Just anything. Anything. It could be about STEAM, or just kind of pursuing something that they would want to do that doesn't have to be STEAM, anything.
Yeah. So, kind of like I've been talking about throughout the interview, have the courage to take up space, embrace the discomfort, know that it's all
Mhm.
going to be okay, and realize that you're making history in some way. I think a lot of people kind of look at their own situations as if they're not doing something cool, or like, oh, every other kid does this. But, in many respects, just being an underrepresented person in whatever field you're coming from is unique and it's special. So I think just embrace the situation that you're in, discomfort and all, and realize that you're an awesome person and that you can do it.
Yes. Wow. Thank you so much for this interview. It was amazing talking to you and just hear you talk about like what you're kind of like passionate about Steam On, and I just hope that everything goes well with Steam On. I really like it sounds exciting. And I'm kind of like a little I it sounds kind of cool. I would love to join, but I'm busy with
Yeah.
this and like so but
Okay.
I definitely like refer it to my peers because it just sounds like an amazing platform for everyone. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much.